Time for the round table.
Suffer long. Who wants to suffer long? Who wants to actively say, yo, I'm going to suffer?
Yeah, boss.
It doesn't make sense. You say it and you're like, how am I supposed to be enjoying this painful thing and be like, I'm gonna count this as joy, like count this all joy. You like explain to me where how I'm meant to push from a place where I'm suffering and I'm smiling, because that suffering and smiling thing to me, they're contradictory. And as much as there's this whole idea of existing and leaning on the Holy Spirit who is within you, we are encased in flesh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how do we then suffer and smile through the pain? Like, how do you?
Right. So it's like a woman who's pregnant, pain of carrying and the whole, torture of, trying to exit the child from the matrix into this reality. The moment the baby is born, she forgets. But that process is difficult. So I'm not trying to sell it that long suffering is not suffering. It is suffering.
I think it's about what's inside of you. When that joy is in there, you can go through everything. So you won't really see it as suffering, but it is suffering. Your flesh will cry out, like he said.
Now, another thing I wanted to also say is that long suffering is a perspective. You understand? It's how, God gives how God is, man receives how man is. And God is eternal, so he's not confined by time. And remember when you started talking to us, you started saying things about time and this. God doesn't have a watch. We're the ones who require the need for us to be able to, have a chronological approach towards time and a kairos approach towards time. God is in the longevity of everything. There's no beginning and end for him. But we have to see situations in when they started and when they'll expire. So I like to always use Joseph as an example of a person who had to suffer for quite some time. And if you have to put it in consideration about the things that was meted upon Joseph to do, the things he was called to do, by the time he got to Genesis 45, his perspective had totally altered. And so he was able to tell his brothers that you guys didn't send me into slavery. It wasn't you that did anything. It was God. He said it was God who sent him through the process. Yeah. And the Bible tells us very carefully and very clearly as well that while he was in the process, he was being blessed. So how do you find a man who's in captivity, a man who is in slavery, but he's being blessed? And sometimes God has to use you to teach or to bless even your enemies, because the Bible tells us that his household, the house of Potiphar, was blessed. The nation of Egypt was preserved. Not only Israel, but Egypt too was preserved. Egypt grew during that time. So there's sometimes that we go through the things we go through, and it might not just be totally about you. There's some things that God is trying to get through you to other people.
Even the blessing of Abraham wasn't about Abraham. He says, I will bless you, I'll do everything.
But it's not about Abraham.
So that in you,
all the... I can trust Abraham because I know he will teach his children.
Yeah.
So sometimes we're looking at it from a very myopic perspective. I'm thinking about me and the wife I want to marry and the kids I want to have.
You nailed it at perspective.
God is looking at it from a...
That's so deep. Especially what you said about we look at things and we need the chronological aspect of time.
Yeah.
And God does not need time. What I love so much, because we refer to God a lot about the one who was, is, and is to come. But what I found most profound is when the Pharisees questioned Jesus, he said, before Abraham, I am. He was never a was. I consistently am.
There's no way.
In all situations, it's I am.
But we will struggle with perspective as long as we don't have a God-centered life.
Yeah.
So if you start out thinking about this as, I need to be long-suffering because there's a cookie at the end of this journey, you'll struggle. And when you are God-centered, which equates to loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, all your strength, all your soul, being God-centered puts everything in perspective because he captures your imagination. So everything else takes its rightful place relative to that, starting with thanking God. What you're doing is putting him at the center. Isaiah 46 says, remember now the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I think where a lot of us miss it is trying to do the calculation for the long suffering. Okay, so how long do I have to wait? What am I going to get? Okay, is it 5 days? Is it 20 years? Exactly. You're trying to calculate your way you can't calculate your way. Many times you don't know how long you have to wait.
I put it mathematically all the time. I say, okay, there's the left-hand side of the equation, there's the right-hand side. In mathematics, whatever you take from the left side, you make up for it on the right side. So it's an equation. It remains an equation. There's equilibrium. So when God takes something from here, it's because He has balanced it over here. So sometimes we see some things, or we think we are deprived of some things or some people. But when you put yourself on the pedestal, when you come up hither and you're seeing things from a different perspective, you see that I didn't actually lose these people. First of all, these people didn't belong to me. My mom was going through a lot of stuff. God told me, I love your mom more than you love her. I created her. Before you were born, she had a relationship with me. So when you begin to see things from God's perspective, you sit on that pedestal with Christ, where you can say, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
As human beings, our nature and our desire is to be comfortable. We seek comfort. We're always looking for the comfortable way to do something, comfortable way to achieve something.
Yeah.
But like we're learning with so much from James 1:2-4, it is in the process, it's in all the things you endure, it's in the discomfort that God builds you, God grows you. So let's talk about that human nature to seek comfort and all the positivity that there is and the things that we can grow from and learn through discomfort.
A lot of people feel, and I don't share that opinion, that Goliath was David's greatest struggle. To me, no. I feel that Saul and Absalom,
13 years.
those were greater issues.
13 years.
Saul, Absalom, his own child wanting to kill him. He ran away. This guy killed giants. He ran away. He suffered. Do you understand? But the point that I'm also trying to raise is that, when people have a deeper understanding about what God is trying to do through them and to them, it makes it a little easier. So you're not trying to time it anymore and say, okay, it will end at this, it will end at that, but God will keep you. You will learn how to abase even in the situation. Do you understand? Because the Bible tells us that after the temptations in the wilderness, the angels came to minister unto him. I mean, this is God-made man, but angels came. You understand? And we know that in every situation, we're not alone. So God has ways to comfort us, even while we went through our trials. And the Bible says that we should comfort others in those same ways that the Holy Spirit comforted us when we went through trials.
And God always takes you to the edge of your faith. How does He train you? Now, it's sad that many Christians don't want training. So we hear a lot of quick fix gospels, and you just read David's 13-year story in 2 chapters and you want it right now. You don't want to run.
That's the problem sometimes.
Yes.
You
You just open
because
it.
nowadays we get things real quick. We're in the age
Real
of
quick, I'm telling you.
If David
instant
was in our
gratification.
world, if David was in today's world, they would tell him to go wash his head.
I'm telling you, or
Tell him to go to
Joseph.
the mountain,
What are you talking about? You are anointed. God has pronounced you king, and then immediately you defeated the giant. And then you have to start running from cave to cave. You have to pretend like you're a mad person. God takes you through
It's really
training.
important, and that you've keyed into here is understanding exactly what the journey is, understanding the journey and the purpose behind it. There's so many things that we've touched on here that I just feel kind of spoke so highly to me. When you talk about Job, and even the devil thinking that he was doing the right thing, that when Jesus was being crucified, he was like, yes, I'm winning. And I think like one of the lessons I learned most out of Job was that the Satan had to go to God for permission first, and God said, "Oh, you can touch this one, but you cannot. But you can touch everything around, but you cannot touch him specifically."
Let me hit you with another one. In the scriptures, as soon as Jesus was baptized, the Bible tells us that the Spirit came upon him and led him into the wilderness to be tempted. Do you understand?
As soon as the seed of the word is sown, birds come
And I
and
think
eat.
there's that understanding, there's that level and importance of understanding that anything that's coming your way, the devil might think that he's winning, but it's all just because God said it's okay, because this one will teach him.
But do you know why this happens? God doesn't allow you to be tested until He has put Himself inside you.
Yeah.
So it's not you that's supposed to respond to the test. It's the Him in you that responds to the test. Do you understand? So God will never allow you. You understand? Because even the Bible tells us that there is no temptation, that you will not be giving your way out. So God already has invested the response to the situation before you go through the situation.
That thing helped me.
One of the things that I think about long suffering, that actually, because the Bible never says that it was being long suffering, but I think it's incredibly to me is Noah. Because you get the word from God. You say, this flood is coming. I'm going to wipe out everything. I want you to build this boat. Now, this boat, based on the dimensions that were given, this would have taken him a long time to build. Years.
The
Right?
technology available
Look at the
at the
amounts, look at what was available, look at the amounts, look how big it must have been because he had to have two of every animal and his family in there. This would have taken a long time. And everyone's there because I just try to picture things in reality. Like, let's actually picture what this process is like. If it's taking him so long to build this boat, that means autumn is there. So you think, okay, maybe in autumn the rain will come, that there will be this flood. There's rain sometimes, but the flood doesn't come. So you're getting rain, but you're not getting the flood. And people are looking at you like, what is this guy doing? Because the rain has stopped and now it's summer. It's not rainy anymore. And this guy is still saying that a flood is coming and he's still out here building, preparing for something that we see no sign of it coming. Imagine how stupid you yourself are feeling building this thing, seeing you're like, okay, maybe this is the rain. Because God didn't say at this precise date. Like, so you're like, okay, I'm ready now. And the rain, the flood hasn't come. And you're having to learn and trust in God in the process of something that makes you look foolish every day to everyone around you. And we need to get to a position of understanding that within this journey, we need to be first off, be ready to look stupid.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like word says, the things of God are foolishness to man.
There's something I would love to add, a fantastic, approach towards all that we've been talking about. But I also want that, in some sense, maybe someday someone somewhere can take from how we're discussing about this and make it and apply it in their life from a practical perspective. Because eventually, the gospel has to be practical, something that we can work with every day of our lives. God never stops talking. It's man that doesn't always listen. God never stops talking. He's talking all the time. But maybe we're not spiritually acute enough to just pick up what God is saying. So even in the process of waiting, right? Even in that whole process where you're going through some sort of suffering and you're going through it for a long time, and length or longevity is really based on your interpretation of it as well. Suffering too is based on what you consider it to be as suffering. There's some things that the both of us will go into and I wouldn't even consider it as something that I'm suffering, and another person will see it as something they can't stand. Now, to each person their own. However, I think that even when you're in that whole process, waiting for the ultimate, in quote, the rain to come, the flood to come, God is responding to you bit by bit in the whole process, and you can be clear enough to identify those things. So for someone like Noah, for instance, the fact that the animals responded to him is indication that the word that God gave him will come to pass. You understand? That's a simple, quick one right there. That, look, it depends on who you're looking on for the report, which is something, and it was when you were talking that my mind went there, that it's on whose report that you're looking at. Is it God's report? Is it the report of the people? Is it even your flesh report? Because they're all speaking to you at all times, but God too is speaking. So there's certain things that God will tell you to do, or maybe God will even give you the instruction to do, or you don't even know it's God, but in there, God will always talk. So, let's drive something home. Let's say a young lady who was 25 years old started dating a man when she was 20. So she dated him for 5 years. Marries him in her 25th birthday year. And they have a kid when she's 26. And before she's 27, the man dies. So what are we going to say to that girl? And this is a person who prayed and got the confirmation. This is your husband. God gave them the baby. God gave them a name for the baby, and the guy just dies. So how are we going to preach long suffering to this girl who maybe for the next 10 years of our life, no man wants to talk to her because she already has a kid? That's what we're facing. Those are the people we have to preach this.
Oh, I'm in that category.
These are the people we need to preach this gospel to. A man who loses a job, God told him, go to this place, go and do this, and he gets the job. And then
You
after a
already
year,
answered this question. You talked about Job. I went through a hell of a lot growing up. Going to church with my mom, and so many fights here and there, and then I grew up a very depressed person. But and I kept asking God questions like, okay, we serve you so much. How come things are so?
and then we must be careful not to preach God like he's a masochist. God doesn't like
like
pain.
a killer,
He's
destroyer.
not a I don't know. He's not the devil, basically.
There is a place, and I think a lot of us, the problem with a lot of us as believers is we actually don't delight in the Lord. He's not the end of all ends.
Wow.
He's a means to our end.
Wow.
The place we ought to get to, the place we get to in God, and we need to remain, and that is what it means to abide, is the place where He is the consummation of all desire. It's like a couple. A man marries a woman. He doesn't say, now we're married there, I have such great plans for us, I can't wait, and ignores her and says, okay, in 2 years we need to have achieved this. It's not that kind of dry, goal-oriented. I mean, being goal-oriented is not bad, but actually his focus is not the goal, it's her. The goal comes because she satisfies him. She's the object of his desire. The days move fast because she is present. What he wants is her. And everything then comes around that. If you gave him a really good life, in quotes, but you removed her from the equation, he will say no. I want her. I want those things, but I want her, and those things should come with her.
Yeah.
The love relationship with God is one of desire, of intention. The heart, the river of our life flows from our heart, it flows out. It is one that is totally obsessed with Him. It is in that place that the situations of life take on perspective and take their position.
You know, sometimes I think that even, when you look at it from cause and effect, so there could have been the ideal, the perfect will of God, which could be the ideal, but we fell. Man fell in the Garden of Eden. And then we can think about that as, oh, I wish we didn't fall. Maybe Adam and Eve should have just fashioned the fruit. But then again, it's the eating of the fruit that begat the crushing of the head.
Yeah.
You get?
Yeah.
So we think God has, in quote, and I'm saying this loosely, God has only one plan. But no. All the plans are His plans, but you just don't know. My pastor would say something like that the devil is a toothless bulldog on God's leash. So He knows how to make the bulldog think like it has some growls and it has some aggression. But no, that growls and aggression is just helping, is part of my plan to ensure that my children get to a particular place. So look at the revelation situation that happened with Mary and Martha with the passing of Lazarus. So that conversation with Jesus, that if you had come, He wouldn't have died. I said, He's not dead. He's sleeping. And then she kicks back a little bit and He says, I am the way, the truth, and you see, so there's sometimes that because we can be, just like you said, that, the person can be overtly associated with their situation, their circumstance. They may lose, but if you're able to transit and, in quote, dissociate from what the flesh is saying and not listen to that too much, not be too consumed by what you want, and be able to listen to what God is saying, because He won't be quiet in that situation. He won't be. He will speak in that situation and let you understand that this was kept like this because God will be glorified. Yeah. This was kept like this because there needs to be resurrection. Yeah. People need to know that when a person has died, 4 days and all of that, it does not stop me. I can still resuscitate situations that are dead and buried. I can still resuscitate situations where 100 years, 39 years, 400 years, I can still take my people out of captivity.
When you talk about the sovereignty of God, or God being the final destination, your source of joy, your center, and all that, it's difficult when someone is taken out of the picture, or something you love is taken out of the picture, and that kind of shows you where you are. So if your connection to God is based on what you're getting from Him, or your definition of the goodness of God is based on what you're getting from Him, then when that thing goes, I think your perception of God changes. Yeah. But because God is He's who He is, You know, despite I always say in the maths of life, he's a constant. You know, and that with him, good is not an adjective; it's a noun. He's not good as a qualifier; it's his nature.
And one thing that I feel like I've learned a lot is that God is not, it's not like God purposed me to specifically do this thing. God is doing what he's doing. Am I seeing what he's doing and joining him? Or think, God, you must use me in this way for what I believe I am made to be used for? God is active. Everything is created for that purpose. Whether if Moses said no, God's time, because he had said how long it was going to last, he had already said that before. He already said he had predestined when the Israelites would get out of Egypt. Therefore, whether Moses said no or yes, somebody else, God would have used them and God would have got the Israelites out. So it's not about me specifically or what God is doing specifically through me, it's about what God is doing, who he is, and basing our relationship on that. And if we base our relationship based on his word, enduring would be easier, enduring would be more attainable, simply because we know outside of seeing the word come to action or manifesting itself, we trust that once the word has left his mouth, the manifestation is inevitable. So I think that's a good place, guys.